Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have a Patreon page where fans of my books and my channel pay a little money each month and they get digital books and magazines, they get behind the scenes info and photos, exclusive videos and articles, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, my patrons to my page, several of them have asked questions, so I thought I would put them all together here in one video. And leading off is Papa Pete, the he's a really cool guy, and he hosts a really up-and-coming YouTube channel, Papa Pete. And Papa Pete has asked if you could pick one game from each of these systems to be remade for the Intellivision Amico, what would it be? The Amico will be out in October of this year, and everybody's really excited about it. A lot of us old-timers are excited in particular. And Papa Pete wants to know what games I would like to see remade for it for several systems, including the Atari 2600. I would love to see Mega Mania, a really fun shooter on the 2600. I would love to see that for the Amico. You got to ship back and forth, shooting just some random strange items that fly by at the top of the screen. You know, it's influenced by Space Invaders, but much different than that game. But it's a ton of fun, and I would love to see it remade for the Amico with all kinds of, different objects and different items, maybe even some scrolling if that's not too sacrilegious, or just mix it up a little bit. My copy of Mega Mania is obviously well worn. It's got that glue bleed through. That glue bleed through that is very common with Activision games, but I love me some Mega Mania, and I like the Atari 5200 version even better because with better graphics, you can actually tell what the items are that you're shooting at. I would love to see a remake on the Amico. For the ColecoVision, he asked, Ladybug, my favorite ColecoVision game. Now, you guys know my favorite game of all time is Mr. Do. The ColecoVision port of Mr. Do is not as good of a port as Ladybug. So Ladybug for the ColecoVision, a fantastic maze game, is my favorite ColecoVision game. I spent more hours on this game than any other ColecoVision game. And holy cow, what a great game. Really cool maze title there. Would love to see that remade on the Amico with new levels, new enemies, new creatures, and all that kind of stuff. It's a Pac-Man type game, but with doors that you can open, like in Lock and Chase, a popular Intellivision game. Would love to see that on the Amico. That would be awesome. Now, the NES, I would love to see a remake of Donkey Kong 3. Donkey Kong 3 is a much maligned by many game because it's a Donkey Kong game, but it changed the formula. It's not a climbing game. It's not a non-scrolling platformer. It's a shooter, kind of like Galaga, but with Donkey Kong characters. And Mario is not in it, so it gets some grief for that. But it's a fantastic shooter with little platforms at the bottom, and you're not only shooting bugs, but you're shooting Donkey Kong, so he'll go up the vine, so he doesn't pounce down on. And it's just a fantastic, fun, frenetic shooter. Would love to see that remade for the Amico with just a whole bunch of levels, and maybe put Mario in it. I have no idea how they could do that, with what kind of contract they would have to negotiate with Nintendo to get the Donkey Kong and Mario license. But hey, we're just dreaming here, so I would love to see Donkey Kong 3 remade for the Intellivision Amico. That would be amazing. So, of course, last but not least is the Intellivision itself. It would be so cool if they remade Diner for the Intellivision Amico, because Burger Time has been remade Diner is the console exclusive, the Intellivision exclusive sequel to the arcade classic Burger Time. And we've seen many, many, many versions of Burger Time for different systems, different ports. And you've seen remakes of Burger Time, like for the Game Boy and even the Switch. There's a recent Burger Time game on the Switch. And Diner is just so obscure, and it would just be really, really cool to get this game, in the mainstream, get more fans of it, and just, do something, maybe even like an amalgamation of Diner and Burger Time, something. They could do something really creative with the Amico, with Diner. Just a really cool game where you kick these food balls around to defeat enemies and climb ladders and things. Really interesting game. It helps to read the manual when you play this game. For an action title, it's relatively complex, not super deep or anything, but it does have 15 screens, and it's a great game. So I highly recommend that for the Amico. And it seems like they could pull that off, being a television product. They could definitely have a reimagining of Diner. That would be totally awesome. Thank you, Papa Pete. Papa Pete's working on the 125, which is a series of videos to review every single Intellivision game, all the original titles. That's going to be awesome. And he's already done a few of those. All right, Pete Noel, another patron to my Patreon page, has asked me what are my favorite animated series, my favorite cartoons from the 80s and 90s. And this was a tough one. There are so many great ones. There are so many great humor shows, but I picked a couple of superhero cartoons. From the 80s, it would be the Super Friends. And this iteration is the Superpowers team, Galactic Guardians. Now, I loved the Super Friends in the 70s and the late 70s, growing up watching that on TV, and it did carry over into the 80s, and I absolutely love the Super Friends. That's a part of that is just nostalgia, because, I mean, they can't even punch villains in this show because of the stringent, network rules back in the day, but I do love me some Super Friends, very nostalgic. So many great cartoons in the 80s. I love Spider-Man and his amazing friends as well, but have to go with the Super Friends, that particular iteration of it, because that was really, very distinctive 80s series for Super Friends. It was cool that it carried into the 80s as well. All right, so of the 90s, this was an easy choice because Batman the Animated Series was in the 90s, pure 90s, excellent, just a phenomenal cartoon series with beautiful animation, great characterizations, all the classic Batman villains, just an excellent series that lasted a long time and sort of branched off into other iterations like Batman and Robin and things like that. But Batman in the Animated Series, it took the character and the franchise seriously. And to me, it's the best iteration ever of Batman outside of the comic books. I like it better than any other Batman cartoons. I like it better than any of the movies even. Just an excellent cartoon. I like it better than any of the Batman video games. Batman the Animated Series. All right, thanks Pete Noel for that. Now Michael Doherty asks, what is the best classic era multi-platform game for the Intellivision? Now this is a great question because the Intellivision has some excellent original titles, but it also has quite a few multi-platform games that were created for a variety of systems. I absolutely love the Intellivision versions of Atlantis and Demon Attack, two phenomenal shooters from Imagic. Those are great. Dig Dug is actually really good on the Intellivision, but and Bump and Jump too. That's another great one, multi-platform game for the television, terrific arcade port. But if I had to pick one, and you hardcore Intellivision fans probably know where I'm going here, Burger Time, just an incredible arcade port for the Intellivision, probably the best arcade port for the Intellivision. The music is faithful to the original game. It's a climbing game where you walk over burger parts to form, full burgers, and you're being chased by enemies, and you can spray peppers at the enemy, like table salt, but table pepper at the enemies to sort of freeze them in their tracks. Super fun, and like I said before, it's been remade and updated and all this stuff, but the Intellivision version is great. It has 7 screens, which is one more than the ColecoVision version, which is awesome. It has a catch-up item, which the other versions don't have. It's even got like an animated title screen. No flickering, just a fantastic port. So Burger Time, thank you, Michael Doherty, for that question. Joshua Smith said, I'd like to know if you've ever purchased a game growing up that you really regretted laying down the cash for. That would have to be Id Like for the NES. That's a role-playing game that's just not fun. Small characters, clunky gameplay. I have no idea why I bought it because I'm not even that big of a role-playing game fan anyway. And I ended up trading Id Like to a friend I was working with at Lone Star Comics for X-Men for the NES. And as many of you know, that's a lousy game too, but at least it has a cool box. That's why I don't have Id Like to show you, because I traded it away because it was awful. And X-Men is bad too, but the X-Men box at least is cool. All right, thank you for that, Joshua Smith. Eric Plunk, another patron to my Patreon page. You can find Eric Plunk on Twitter at Eric Plunk, just ERICPLUNK. Find him on Twitter. I'll put a link. Eric asks, what is your favorite non-video game related hobby? Now that's a tough one because I love music, I love movies, I love going to concerts. But if I had to say anything, it would be bicycling. I love to get out on my bicycle. I love to ride. I love to go to different cities, take my bike or rent a bike and just ride all around, explore the city that way. There's no other way to do it for me. I love that. Except, walking a city is great too, but just getting on your bike is awesome. Just being out in the air, fresh air and sunshine, absolutely love that. I love biking just all around my neighborhood and the bicycle trails and things. Unfortunately, I have a torn meniscus in my knee, so that makes bicycling, most days I cannot bicycle anymore, unfortunately. I'm looking into some treatments for that to see what I can do that don't involve surgery, so we'll see. So now that I can't really do much bicycling, I would have to say hiking. I love hiking, I love basketball, but my number one all-time hobby, not related to video games, is bicycling. Thank you so much for that, Eric Plunk. Shane Stein, the executive producer of the Game Chasers movie and a really good friend of mine, he asks, what book projects are you working on or considering after the NES Omnibus? Now, many of you know that I am working on, here's the printout of the cover since I don't have the book yet. I'm working on the NES Omnibus, and it is on Kickstarter right now, and I will put a link. And Shane wants to know what book or books I'm working on or thinking about for the future. Working on is a little bit of a spoiler because I do have some, I'm doing a little pre-work on some, but I'm mainly editing volume 2 of the NES Omnibus right now. So what book or books am I going to do after the NES Omnibus? Now that's a good question. There's actually 2 or 3 projects I'm really strongly considering, and there's a couple of things I'm working on, but I would love to do a updated version of the Encyclopedia of Kiss. You can see Gene Simmons of Kiss in silhouette there. I would love to do an updating of this book with a Paul Stanley silhouette and maybe some stars on the cover and everything. Encyclopedia of Kiss, I would love to do an updating of that. Just talk about the albums that have come out since this book was released, like Ace Frehley's solo albums, Paul Stanley's Soul Station project, the concerts and tours and everything that have happened since that book was published in 2014. So I'd love to do that. I would also love to do a sequel to the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, 1977 through 1987. I've asked many times for, a lot of people want me to cover the next decade, and right now it's just a matter of time, so hopefully at some point I can do a sequel to the 100 Greatest Console Video Games covering 1988 to 1998. That would be awesome. You get a lot of PlayStation, Nintendo 64, some of those later NES games, and all kinds of great stuff. Super Nintendo and Genesis. Would love some TurboGrafx. Would love to do 100 Greatest from 88 to 98. So thank you, Shane, for that. And so in addition to those 2 items, I'm definitely going to do at least one more omnibus, probably spread over 2 books, but I can't say what that is yet. My publisher, Schiffer, doesn't want me talking about that yet. So let's just say that I will be doing another omnibus, probably 2-book set at some point, and maybe beyond. We'll see how it goes. Right now, the Kickstarter for the NES Omnibus is going really well, so that's a promising sign. Last, and certainly not least, Bridget Tulos has asked, what are your favorite video game movies? Now, she asked this a long time ago, and thank you so much, Bridget, for your patience. This is a tough one for me. I love so many video game movies, even though they're not always great. I think, The Wizard is fun. It's not a great movie, but it's fun. Joysticks is trashy, good fun. It's so bad, it's good, that kind of thing. It's an awful movie. But I do legitimately enjoy some really good ones like Cloak and Dagger. I love Tron, obviously. But if I had to pick one movie that has something to do with video games, it would be The Last Starfighter. I love this film. I love Catherine Mary Stewart. She is awesome. She was also in Night of the Comet and Weekend at Bernie's. I love that actress. I grew up watching her on Days of Our Lives when my mom would be watching it. I would watch it sometimes, and you can see her there on the back cover. I love this movie. It's sort of, the plot pretty much rips off Star Wars, but it's still a ton of fun. I love the old school special effects. They really, really pop on Blu-ray. Great film. Just tons of fun. I never get tired of watching it. I like this even a smidge better than Tron. Sorry, Michael Suet. But anyway, love me some Last Starfighter. Great movie. And related to that, my favorite movie that is based on a video game directly, most of my favorite video game movies are like documentaries like The King of Kong, even though it plays with the facts, Chasing Ghosts, Man vs. Snake, things like that. I love the video game documentaries. And I love video game or movies that are just sort of have something to do with video games, like Wreck-It Ralph, like Tron. But as far as movies that are specifically based on a single game, most of those just aren't very good, and I haven't watched them. Like Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark, I've heard those aren't very good, so I didn't even watch them. I think I watched the first Resident Evil movie and the first Tomb Raider movie, but not great. But if I had to pick one, it would be Mortal Kombat. This movie is actually pretty good. And I've had the DVD for a while, but I just recently picked up the Blu-ray for $3, so that was a no-brainer. So thank you, Bridget Tulos, for that. And thank you to all the patrons to my Patreon page. I really appreciate it. Gonna put a link to my Patreon page if you guys want to join. For as little as $1 a month, you can get access to behind-the-scenes stuff. And for $3 a month or more, you get just about everything on there, behind the scenes stuff. And if you do $8 or more, I will send you some different items, you know, signed items and everything like that. For $25 or more, you'll get the Tales from a Retro Gamer t-shirt and some physical books. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being a patron to my Patreon page. Thank you to all of you. I really, really appreciate it. And if you just want to keep watching my videos for free, that is perfectly fine. You can find my books on Amazon and my personal page as well. If you just want to read sample pages, that's great. If you don't spend a dime, all good. I just thank every one of you for watching the channel and, you know, just keeping in touch. Thanks a lot, guys.